When the rain was forecast for this weekend, everyone was having flashbacks to Spa, but we've managed to get a full qualifying session in at Sochi, and Lando Norris has achieved his first ever F1 pole position. Welcome to F1 Grid Talk Podcast. Today we'll be reviewing the 2021 Russian Grand Prix qualifying. My name is Ruby Price, and joining me we have sports journalist Louis Edwards.
Hello.
Hello. And Tom Downey from the Everything F1 podcast.
Hello.
Hello. Firstly, if you enjoy this podcast, we would love it if you could take 5 to leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. We'll shout out all of you who do to say thanks. Also, everyone who has already left a review and leaves a review from today will go into a draw to win a shirt, as well as people who leave a comment on the YouTube video. People who click subscribe on YouTube will go into a draw to win a mug. Finally, the Grid Talk team are sending their love and strength to the family, team and loved ones of Dean Berta Vinales, who tragically lost their life following a crash in the World SSP 300 race today. So Louis, it was all about being on the right tyres at the right time today, and that's exactly what Lando Norris did, and it's given him his maiden pole position.
Yeah, it was all about getting on those soft tyres at the right point, and I think teams realised pretty quickly after George Russell had been the first one to gamble that it was the right tyre to be on. You could see the lighter grey sort of on the track coming through, and I think bar the final sector, I think the track was pretty much dry and it was ready from the off. But no, it was a great job by Lando. We know what he could do in the wet. He was showing great pace in Q1 and Q2. He was really up there with the Mercedes, so he was the prime candidate to take pole position if he could get a clean lap in. And luckily, for him, the Mercedes ran into errors. They were too late on, switching to the slick tyres. And Lando was there, put the car on pole. I'm unbelievably happy about that. And yeah, that couldn't be more happy for him. But at the end of the day, points come tomorrow, and it's going to be a tough race for him to stay out in front. And starting pole in Sochi is not always the best place to start, especially with such a long slipstream into turn 2. So, but great job by Lando today, and let's pray that he stays there tomorrow.
Yeah, we have indeed seen that sometimes starting second or third can actually give you the better race start in Sochi. So it will be a long run down to turn 2 for Lando Norris if he wants to stay in the lead of this race tomorrow. But Tom, his former McLaren teammate, Carlos Sainz, for a brief second was on provisional pole. But in the end, when Lando took provisional pole, Carlos Sainz relegated to P2. But still, Carlos Sainz P2 for Ferrari in 2021 at the Russian Grand Prix qualifying. That's a fantastic result for the team, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a really, really good result for Ferrari. I didn't think they'd be that high up this weekend because it's typically been such a Mercedes-dominated track, with years gone by, and obviously with Ferrari having the issues they have this year, which are very much a hangover of the 2020 abomination they had after they were caught not allegedly tampering, but not tampering with the rules. I think there's a best way to put it. Sainz, much like Louis said, Russell set the precedent for switching to softs. It was a case of who was going to blink first, and Sainz, he put in a really, really good middle sector because I saw he went purple, especially then after Hamilton didn't put in a better first sector at all. I saw when I saw Sainz put in that sector, I initially thought, oh, he's going to put in a good lap, but my mind straight away did go to Lando and say Lando could be on pole, and obviously, joy of joys, he was. But yeah, really good race for Ferrari. I hope they can capitalise on it tomorrow. I do think they will struggle to hold on to that position because if Hamilton gets a good launch tomorrow, or there's a good chance he'll get a decent slipstream down into turn 1 or 2. I think it is technically turn 2 now. The Ferrari may struggle, and Hamilton's going to probably be thinking of the sort of longer term picture. But he also said that in Baku when he said it's a marathon, not a sprint. So we will see.
We will see indeed. And Louis, we've mentioned him twice already, but George Russell, it's time for slicks, he said to his team. goes on to slicks, doesn't really set the timing sheet alight, but then when it mattered most, George Russell delivered, and P3, not even his best lap for the, not even his best qualifying performance ever, but still a fantastic one and ahead of both Mercedes cars.
Yeah, no, I saw a great sort of stat. It's like the fact that George Russell put his Williams in third place, out qualifying both Mercedes, and it's not even his best qualifying performance of the year. It's crazy. But yeah, as you said, he wasn't setting the time sheets alight. He was still trying to get temperature in the tires. He was the first to go out onto the soft tires. He was really paving the way, just trying to get as much heat into those tires. And then he had that extra lap. He had that extra lap on those tires, which put him in a really good sort of window. And there you go, puts it P3, just shows that the gamble really paid off, because it was a bit of a struggle to get into Q3 in the first place. He was very tight, but you got to be there, you got to be on the right tires, and that's what he did. And it just goes to show that George Russell is a mega driver. He really is. Mr. Saturday. It's going to be very difficult for him to stay there for tomorrow. When you have got the likes of Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas just behind him, and I think he knows that he won't be fighting them, but there's a good chance of points. Russia, we all think is a good track to overtake on. You've got such a long straight, but it's very deceptive. The amount of 90-degree turns and how tight it gets in that final sector, it does make it very difficult to follow other cars. So if he can stay in the points, it could be yet another points finish for Williams and George Russell, and just an amazing job all round.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to go back to what you're saying about how sometimes it can be deceptive to overtake here, Max Verstappen was complaining during practice yesterday that he couldn't pass cars ahead of him. And considering he's starting at the back, that could be pretty, it's certainly not a good sign for the Red Bull team tomorrow. But Tom, reigning world champion Lewis Hamilton put his car in the wall at one point, managed to get going, but still, that was what cost Lewis Hamilton pole position today, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Because with Verstappen out of the picture this weekend, Hamilton effectively had a clear run, because aside from his teammate, there wasn't really anybody else who was going to challenge him. Maybe Norris or Ricardo. I don't think Paris was anywhere near getting towards pole this weekend, as his results have proven. But Hamilton was on top in all the sessions. He had set a good bank lap, and then it was the whole sort of like, who's going to blink first? And he made the right decision to switch to softs. But I do remember when drivers were switching to softs, Hamilton was on a push lap and he didn't back off that push lap, which meant that he was compromised towards the end of qualifying, because it meant he only had one run in Q3 on the slick tyres. Now, I get that he probably thought he was going quicker, but the way the track was drying, and also factoring in that it wasn't that warm, so he realistically would have probably had to have done 2 outlaps, or maybe sort of like 1 and a bit, to really get some temperature into the tyres. He should, whether he or the team or whoever, should have said, you need to back off and pit this lap, so we can basically mitigate any potential risk that's coming through. That should have happened. It didn't happen. Then he was effectively rushing when he was pitting. Now, the accident is... I've seen some people saying, oh, the pressure's getting to him, all the rest of it. I don't think it is. It's just the pit lane was incredibly wet, and it would have been deceptive out on track because it was by and large dry. So he would have been tuned in thinking, oh, it's going to be pretty dry in the pit lane. Plus, Russia is quite a tight pit lane. Norris had an accident earlier today or yesterday, I can't remember exactly when it was, where he almost spun, or I think he did spin and just about touch the wall. Plus, that Mercedes pit box is at the start of the pit lane, obviously, because Milk on top. So he wouldn't have had as much room, but seeing the way he clouted the wall, I didn't think it was that bad at first. But then when I saw them actually taking the front wing off, and effectively the whole left-hand side was just dangling by a sort of fibre, I did worry initially that his session was over. They managed to get him back out. There also wasn't like loads of lasting damage. But yeah, he didn't have enough time to get the heat into the tyres, and he spun when he was on the slick tyres. So yeah, whether it's his fault, the team's fault, whatever, it didn't happen today for him.
Yeah, it is at least lucky for him that his banker lap on the Inters was good enough for P4 in the end of it, and drivers just weren't improving enough. It could be a lot worse for the Mercedes team is, I think, the bigger picture here. And considering his
definitely.
championship rival starting from the back, and he's
It's-
still 16 positions ahead of him.
Yeah, and it speaks volumes about just how good a driver Hamilton is, that he was still able to finish qualifying fourth, having had an accident in the pit lane.
Yeah, absolutely. And Louis, onto the other McLaren driver, a bit of a come down from a win at Monza, but P5 for Daniel Ricciardo, pending an investigation for, who was it that him and Stroll at turn 2, which I don't think anyone has actually seen, but Stroll accused Ricciardo of blocking him.
There was no investigation necessary.
I was about to say,
okay.
it's been dropped.
All right, cool. That's good. Yeah, so Daniel Ricciardo, P5 then. Yeah, ahead of the second Ferrari because Leclerc's got that penalty, but it's a good session.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know if you know what happened, but it was on the exit of the pit lane. Daniel was basically coming out the pit lane, and the way that the white lines work, it takes you very far down the straight before you can actually turn in for turn 2. So Daniel was on the exit of the pit lane. Stroll was on a push lap. There wasn't any sort of precedent for Stroll or Ricciardo to be penalised. So yeah, it's completely fair. But no, like Daniel was looking a bit shaky in in both sessions. He was quite clearly off the pace compared to Lando, but again, the McLaren made the most of the strategy. Got their drivers out at the right time on those soft tires, and there you go. Daniel Ricciardo P5, and that's where he needed to be. He can get points, and when you've got someone like Charles Leclerc all the way down right at the back of the grid, it is important for McLaren in this constructors battle with Ferrari to be getting as many points as possible. And hopefully, even though it wasn't the best session, I think he would have probably hoped that he could have maybe got up into the top 3. I don't think he can beat himself too much. 5th is still a great place. And as we've been talking about, getting that slipstream down into turn 2 is key. He's going to be right in amongst it all. As long as he keeps his nose clean, gets through turn 2 cleanly, gets through turn 3 cleanly, he could potentially make up places. And we know what Daniel's like on the brakes. He's not going to be afraid to someone up the inside, maybe at turn 2 at some point in the race. So I think it's a decent place, and he'll be a great backmarker for Lando, especially if he's leading, potentially stop Bottas, or even if a miracle happens and Verstappen really gets through the field, he could be quite a nice blocker for Lando behind.
Yeah, it'll certainly be a bit of team tactics for the second McLaren tomorrow. But, he did get a very good getaway in both racing sessions in Monza last time out. So off the start of the pit straight, it could be alongside Lewis, if not ahead of him. So it'll all be to watch at the start of the race tomorrow. And Tom, Fernando Alonso, P6. Pretty good session from him, considering where Fernando was at the start of the season.
Yeah, sorry, my computer's gone off. Yeah, very good qualifying for Alonso. If anyone was going to do it in a not quite up their car, it's going to be Alonso, though, isn't it? Let's be fair. He really sort of wrung the neck of that Alpine this weekend. Much like the other teams, he switched from the Inters at a really, really good time. He was able to get the heat into them. He was able to finding a clear space on the track. Really solid lap. Not not anything sort of spectacular in the sense that like we're sitting here going, wow, what a lap. But it just, I think he's probably been overshadowed a bit by the top three who were in front of him, plus obviously with Hamilton doing a Strictly Come Dancing impression in the pit lane. But really good qualifying from Alonso. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Since about Baku this year, he's really sort of like kicked back into the swing of things in F1. He's been really, really good. And then obviously especially with how good he was in Hungary as well. Again, Russia, it seems to favour people who are starting about P2 to P5. So if someone gets a poor launch in front of him, say for example Hamilton gets a poor launch, or Sainz or Russell or someone, he could get past and get a slipstream from the front two, and off he goes. It could be all to play for. It could.
Could being the operative word in Formula One. But yeah, Louis, Valtteri Bottas, P7, definitely disappointing for someone who is known as a Sochi specialist. But he was ahead in both free practice sessions yesterday. It looks like he had a good chance at pole position, and then just when it came to the opportunities for the soft tire, he wasn't on it at all.
Yeah, he wasn't exactly helped by the Hamilton crash either. As Tom was saying, like Mercedes really did make an error. They sent both drivers still on push laps on those intermediates. They left it too late, and then of course the misfortune. Hamilton's in the wall. They've got to change his front wing. That's going to take time. Bottas coming in, he's stuck there. They had to move Hamilton's car, out the way to actually get Bottas to pit and put on some tires. But even then it was too late. He couldn't get the temperature in the tires. He was never going to go any faster, and his banker lap on those intermediate tires to begin with wasn't the best either. So yeah, it was all around a difficult session for Mercedes. And he is meant to be the Sochi specialist, and yeah, we really didn't see that much in any of the qualifying sessions today. It did look like Hamilton was comfortably faster. So it's going to be a difficult race for Bottas tomorrow. I think he's behind so many talented drivers. We all know what Fernando can do with a Mercedes behind him. We've got the likes of Charles Leclerc, Lando Norris. George Russell probably will be like the easiest to overtake purely on of his car. Not through any lack of driver talent. So I think he's going to find it very difficult, and we know that he's not always prone to getting the best starts. So he could be swallowed up by the drivers behind him. Yeah, I was so confident going into this weekend that Bottas were going to be able to do something, but it seems to have all been wiped away in the space of 10 minutes.
Yeah, and I think you mean Carlos Sainz as opposed to Charles Leclerc ahead of him, considering Charles Leclerc starting in 19th.
Yeah, that's fine to me. I'm so used to Leclerc being ahead of Sainz this season.
Yeah. Tom, Lance Stroll, the lead Aston Martin after Vettel got knocked out in Q2. I think he managed to set a lap on the soft tyres, but it just wasn't really quick enough to shoot him up the timing sheets.
Yeah. With Aston this week, I feel a bit like, aside from Vettel going out, but we're not talking about Vettel. I don't really know what to say about Stroll. Decent effort to get into Q3. If the car looks all right this weekend, again, if he gets a decent slipstream, he might end up sort of like, he might sort of like luck into about a P7, P6, or with Stroll's history, he could be the catalyst for a crash into turn 2. So it depends. It's going to go one of two ways for him tomorrow. He's either going to sort of just like sort of slip on by, or he's going to be caught wheel banging, maybe punting someone off, getting stuck, getting to the battles, and then getting bogged down in a sort of real midfield scrap. I don't really know what else to say about Stroll. Decent effort, did well against Q3, out-qualified his teammate. I think Aston will be pretty happy with that.
Yeah, certainly happy to be in Q3 and ahead of Red Bull Racing Sergio Perez. Louis, what's going on with Sergio Perez? Because since he got that contract extension with Red Bull, he's been nowhere.
Yeah, I did say I didn't see Perez doing much this weekend. He really has been off the ball, and Red Bull needed him to step up. They knew that Verstappen was going to be at the back of the grid. They knew, they're going to take a big, hit on points from him, but they then need Sergio Perez to keep up this pressure in the constructors. And today was a perfect opportunity. Mercedes had a shocker, and Perez then had equally as bad of a shocker. He did look quite poor in the other two sessions. I think even if the thing had stayed wet, the session had stayed wet, he was going to be behind the likes of Lando Norris. He was going to be behind Carlos Sainz. He really didn't have the pace, and it just leaves Red Bull in a really tricky situation. Christian Horner's always going on. He just needs that other car to be able to back Max up and win them a constructors championship. But Perez is really starting to falter now, and it's unfortunate for him. We all want Perez to do well. He's, deserving of that seat, given what he had to go through so much of his career. But it's just really not working well. And he's got to hope that he can start to sort of pave a way through the field tomorrow, but it is not going to be easy. And I just don't think he really has the pace. He's not looking comfortable. I think it's going to be a very sort of long race for Perez tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. And to round off the top 10, Tom, Esteban Ocon, P10, behind his teammate, but, in the top 10. And that's where Alpine needed both drivers to be, considering where everyone else is today.
Yeah, decent qualifying from Ocon. I mean, then they're sort of like drivers from about sort of fifth downwards. I feel like they've been overshadowed by what happened in front of them, unfortunately. And obviously, Ocon is partnered with Fernando Alonso, who put it P6, and obviously has this sort of huge, sort of like prestigious history behind him. So perhaps sometimes it's a bit of an unfair comparison. But Ocon did well in a car that wasn't expected to go round the track that well this weekend. The Renault power unit is probably the second worst on the grid. I would say it's marginally better than the Ferrari unit, but it's streets behind the Honda and the Mercedes units, which are powering the top two teams, obviously. So a decent lap by Esteban. I think Alpine were quite quick on switching to the soft or to the slick tyres as well. Obviously, we also George Russell did it first, but then I think Alpine and McLaren were quite quick at getting their drivers out onto those tyres as well. So it was a good timing. They sort of used Williams as almost a sort of benchmark, if you like, or sort of like trial run, or sort of like a simulator run almost, if you like, of how the tyres are going. Sensible decision. And then, put in a decent lap. And he's in Q3. I feel a bit like Stroll with this one, I'm afraid. He's in Q3. Well done. Good chance of points tomorrow.
He's in Q3. Well done. That's where he should be. Cool.
I should be a team principal, honestly.
Pretty much. We'll get you on the pit wall next time round. Where's the next race?
Oh, is it the TBC on the calendar?
Yes.
I love that place.
I know,
TBC. Yeah.
Rather go there than Saudi.
The Saudi Arabian Grand Prix does not exist, Louis. I don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, P11, Sebastian Vettel complained about being held up by Sonoda, but the stewards dismissed that pretty much before the next session even started. But he was 500ths away from Q3. And considering, we've said Aston Martin weren't really expected to do much this weekend, that's close.
Yeah, very close. We've seen sort of in the past that, even when they were, Racing Point or Force India, they thrive in the wet sort of changeable conditions. And I think that's the reason why Stroll managed to, do as well as he did, despite the fact that we know that his race probably tomorrow is not going to be the best. But Vettel, he was looking good, and I think he just got caught out. He set his lap time a lot earlier than the drivers behind him, and they, just on those sort of fresher intermediates, they were just able to, get that performance. And like Sainz just managed to scrape through, and then Russell was also through. And he was so unlucky just not to get into Q3, and you heard his despair on the radio. He was absolutely gutted, and for good reason. I think if he was able to get another lap in, I think he would have been comfortably into Q3. But I would say he's going to be the full of fresh tyres tomorrow. That doesn't matter, as Q2 was wet, but it does put him in a good place. He could potentially score points tomorrow. It's going to be difficult. It's not going to be easy for him by any shout. But we'll just have to see what this Aston Martin can do in the race. I haven't got the most optimism for it. I think, like Tom said, they got where they are. Well done. They can't really do much more, and we'll just see how it plays out tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. Tom, a driver who will be very disappointed with his session, Pierre Gasly. We're used to seeing him in P6, but when it came to it, P12 for Pierre Gasly.
He's P6 times 2 if you think about it.
He just decided to take 2 P6s to make up for it.
Yeah, he really has been Mr. P6 this year. That's how consistent he is. He's done it twice in one weekend. No, yeah. I mean, I'm sure anybody who listens to this will know how much I adore Pierre Gasly. So this one is, try not to get too emotional while talking about this one. But it was a shame. He just couldn't. He just couldn't quite get that lap together today. Sadly, it's really the closest he's been to Tsunoda for a hell of a long time as well. We'll get on to that. It's a real shame that Gasly wasn't able to get into the top 10, because I think there's a good chance he would have been up there where our current top 3 are. Because we know how good a driver he is, and I think there's a good chance that he'll finish in the points tomorrow. I think we'll see him battling and fighting his way through. He's such a resilient driver, and I don't know if it was captured on the main feed or if I saw it on social media. I can't quite remember, but there was footage of him talking to either his engineer or someone in the back of the AlphaTauri garage or in the hospitality somewhere. Again, I can't remember where. Point is, he was in the paddock somewhere, and you can see how annoyed with himself he was. He was so annoyed that he has not made it through to Q3, and it goes to show how high of an expectation he sets himself because of how good he is and how well he's been doing this year. So it's the worst quality he's had for a while this year. I think it's only something like the second time he's not been in Q3 or there's some stat like that. He's been in Q3 a lot. I might be making that up, but yeah, shame for Gasly today. I do think he'll get into the points tomorrow. That he's a strong driver. We all know how good a driver he is. So hopefully he will get into the points.
Yeah, Gasly will be one of the drivers that was wishing that qualifying just hadn't happened, because he managed to set a time good enough for P3 and FP2 yesterday. But, sadly for him, qualifying did happen and it just didn't quite go well. But Louis, Tom's bold prediction of Yuki Tsunoda making it out of Q1 came true. He ended up qualifying in P13, which is right next to his teammate, which is a statistic that he'll be happy about, even if his teammate isn't.
Yeah, he'll definitely be happy to be in Q3, in Q2. Jump into conclusions now. But Yuki was kind of helped out by the fact that getting into Q2 wasn't the most difficult. Max didn't set a lap, and then it was just the Haas and the Alfa Romeo who predictably was slower. Yuki has been slow in qualifying, but he's never been as slow as them two teams. So it was helped somewhat. But to see that the AlphaTauri 12 and 13 shows that car really wasn't performing today, and I think both drivers just got the most that they could out of it. I just think it just wasn't a great day overall for AlphaTauri. But 13th on paper doesn't sound like the worst position to be starting in. So it could be worse. But I don't really expect too much from Yuki tomorrow. It's going to be difficult to overtake. And he's just going to have the likes of Leclerc and Verstappen probably trying to overtake him within the first 10 laps of the race. And I can see him dropping behind them too, but not really making up too much sort of ground during the race. So while it does sound good and 13th may seem like an improvement, realistically, he is probably going to drop down to about 15th, and I can't imagine him getting too much higher.
Yeah, absolutely. Tom, Nicholas Latifi will be starting in P18 tomorrow, but he did actually manage to qualify in P14 today with one hell of a lap in Q1, which put him I think up at third at one point. But it's wet conditions, you know what it's like. But a very impressive qualifying, I'd say, from Nicholas Latifi, at least today.
Yeah. Again, Latifi's done really, really well this weekend. I'm going to sound like I'm going to sound like a broken record by saying this, as I'm positive I've said this before, but since about Austria, Latifi has really sort of settled in and honed himself in with that car. He seems really sort of at one with it, if you like. I know that's a really sort of corny thing to say, but he really seems to be getting the most out of it. And now that he's had a few points finishes, it's definitely sort of boosted his confidence. And he's rightfully earned his place for 2022. And I think he's earned it on merit, not just because of the backing. And Williams have obviously spoken about that anyway. It's a shame that he had an engine issue, because I think there was a good chance that he could have got into Q3. He was showing some really, really good pace, and he's honestly doing really well now. So it's just a case of if he can sort of keep it together a bit more. Hopefully the Williams package next year will be more competitive as well, because they've made huge improvements this year. And it looks like it could work out sort of quite well long term for Latifi.
Yeah, absolutely. We do hope that, the Williams can return to their former glory, because consecutive points finishes is great, but, this is a team that used to be fighting for wins. But I don't think that's going to happen tomorrow. Louis, Charles Leclerc, qualified P15, will be starting P19 tomorrow because of taking a fresh engine after Ferrari have introduced a power upgrade. Do you expect to see him, charging through the field with, a new Ferrari engine, or is it going to be a bit of a slog and, maybe he's going to get past the Alphas and Latifi?
I think points are definitely on the card for Charles Leclerc tomorrow. How many is probably up for debate. I can't imagine him being, anywhere near the top 6. I think it is going to be a bit of a slog, as I've already said. Russia is deceptively hard to overtake at. It may have this long straight, which the engine advantage may help, but following other cars through the slow corners, through all the 90-degree corners, is going to be difficult. It wouldn't surprise me if Ferrari looked for some alternate strategy, maybe start him on the hardest compound, send him as long into the race as possible, and then see what they can do at the end. I think that is definitely a probable strategy, especially when tyre deg is quite low here at Russia. The track is quite smooth, and a lot of it's been resurfaced, so that's going to help with tyre life. So if you can stick him on, a set of the harder tyres, you'll probably go quite long into the race, and just see what he can do. So, but it's not going to be enough to get him those sort of big points that Ferrari are going to need to really compete in the Constructors' Championship. I think that's really going to be down to Carlos Sainz tomorrow. But I definitely keep an eye out on Charles Leclerc. He is going to make his way through the field, but how quickly and how far it is, I think it's really quite unknown at this point.
Yeah, it could certainly play into the strategy of the top teams if he does start on the hards and manages to stick in that pit window, because that will obviously affect strategy. But, you know, as you say, it'll be interesting to see how far up he can get. So, Tom, Kimi Räikkönen returns this weekend, qualified P16, so out in Q1, which is, you know, the usual site for at least one of the Alphas this season. But, you know, to come back and go straight up to P16, a relatively good job for someone who, you know, many people say should have gone a few years ago.
Yeah, and I am one of those people who says and stands by that Kimi should have given it up a couple of years ago, should have gone out on a high after he left Ferrari, if you ask me. But you know, here we are 2 years later. And after all, it is just a hobby for Kimi, as he said, in his fleeting role in Drive to Survive. But yeah, I mean, you know, Kimi's had, what, 2 weekends off, wasn't he? Because he missed Zandvoort and Monza, which was back to back. So he's probably been the best part of a month before he's actually sat in a race car, because the last time he was actually in a race car was when he was effectively queuing for petrol, like we are in the UK in Spa. You know, which has been, if I look at the calendar, has been pretty much a month. It probably did Kimi some good to sort of just reset, almost just have a sort of like another mini summer break, if you like. It's like he was quoted as saying in an interview that he didn't watch all of the races and that he sort of just switched off and just spent time with his family, which is a good idea. I mean, you know, he couldn't go anywhere anyway because he had COVID. But yeah, to jump back in, go P16. It would have been P17 if Verstappen would have been sort of like actively participating in qualifying. But he jumped straight back in, beat Giovinazzi. Giovinazzi had a terrible day at the office anyway. Just sort of did the best with the relatively sort of like just shoddy machinery he's got.
Yeah, certainly one word for it. And speaking of shoddy machinery, Louis, Mick Schumacher didn't quite make it to Q3, as was your bold prediction in the preview for this weekend. But, you know, he will be starting in P15, I think it is. So that's good for little old Mick.
Yeah, it's not too bad. Yeah, no, he was quite far off my my prediction. It looked more likely at one point that his beloved teammate was gonna out qualify him, but luckily normality restored, and we saw Mick in front of Nikita as we've grown so used to this season. But yeah, you know, I don't think you can really take too much away from Mick. He got himself ahead of an Alpha. Probably will be at the back come turn 2 anyway. But you know, you got to give him credit where credit's due. He didn't spin, didn't crash. Yeah, there's so little you can really say about the Haas. The fact that they complete a clean lap without anything going wrong is an achievement, especially in that car. But for Mick, he does look like he's getting more settled. The amount of times that he's now really taking the fight to the Alfa Romeos in front of him, really leaving his teammate absolutely in the dust. God knows, I don't know if you have it there, but how many seconds he was ahead of Mazepin in this session? Probably a couple at least. Four. It just says all you need to know, really. You know, he's a lot more settled with that car than his teammate is, and you know, hopefully when Haas can, or if they put together a better package next year, we could probably see a lot more from him.
Yeah, absolutely. Tom, Antonio Giovinazzi spun in free practice yesterday and sort of wrecked that car, and spun in qualifying this afternoon as well. So seeing him in P18 in qualifying is hardly surprising, you would say.
Yeah. Oh dear, Gio. You showed such promise a few weeks ago, and now, it's just. I get there were really, really tricky conditions today, and obviously Hamilton touched the wall as we've sort of spoken about, but he hasn't done himself any favors, and he does have a history of sort of spinning around like a roulette wheel on on the sort of F1 circuit. Anyway, he's done it in Spa a few times. He crashed out in the rain in either Austria or Styria last year, whichever quali was rain soaked. And given that he's, well, as far as we're aware, fighting for his seat, I mean, I think that seat has already gone. I think a decision has been made and they're just tying up loose ends. And I think he's out, but that is just speculation, obviously. I think if he's going to be confirmed, they confirmed him at the Italian Grand Prix for an Italian driver, the score. Disappointing qualifying, got qualified by a Haas. And it's not like it's Giovinazzi's first year on the grid either. It's his third year, plus he had, obviously, those 2 races with Sauber in 2017. So, and he got qualified by his teammate who is, granted, yes, it is a world champion, but has been out of the car for the best part of a month, like I said earlier. So, he's on borrowed time, or he's been on borrowed time for a while, I think. And it just wasn't good enough for what Alpha want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Just not good enough. And, sort of a sign of a driver who knows that he's not going to be around next season. So, yeah. Louis, you've already touched on him being 4 seconds behind his teammate, but Nikita Mazepin, 19th out of 20, should really be 20 if Max Verstappen had actually, set a lap. But, just wasn't really there for it today at all, or this season.
Yeah. In some qualifying, I do wonder if he just looks at the 107% time, just goes, let's see if I can actually try and beat that. It's like the only thing slower than him is usually that time. But yeah, no, it's predictable. He was going to be at the back. Even at his home race, he couldn't make anything happen. Well, I don't know whether he's allowed to call it his home race. Of course, he races under the Russian,
the Russian Olympic Committee, or
it's the Athletic Federation. Yeah, it's Athletic Federation or something like that.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't expect anything. We didn't get anything. Therefore, expectations met. He has been confirmed for next year, which is definitely down to his. It's down to his dad more than his own talent. But I don't know what to say. I don't really want to say anything. It's just, we know what he's like. We know that he's terrible, and we know that it will be very much last going into turn 2, despite the fact he's got 3 cars behind him tomorrow, which is probably a first for him.
Imagine if going into turn 2, he's still actually ahead of those 3 cars as well.
He's jumped the start. There's no way that's happening.
He's done a Bottas Austria 2018. If he's done that,
0.2 seconds reaction time.
Yeah.
Tom, just to go to you then on Max Verstappen, obviously didn't actually set a lap today, but will be starting 20th because he's the last on the grid and he's got, I think, the biggest engine penalty. These, you know how it can get confusing, but yeah. What do you expect from Max Verstappen tomorrow? And do you think he's got a chance at points? Do you think he's got a chance at higher than just, P10, 9 or 8?
He could do all right. That's quite evasive. I think he'll be aiming to get into points, and I would imagine he will probably look to take the fastest lap off Hamilton as well, because every point counts in this championship. He knows that he is on the back foot. I'd say Verstappen got lucky with Hamilton not not qualifying P1. Because if Hamilton qualified P1 and got a good launch, we all know the story. Off he goes into the sunset. Bottas, you do you, hun. And then it would have been 26 points for Hamilton game set and match, but it's obviously going to be a bit different tomorrow, thank God. And Verstappen could get through. I'd imagine we'll see a lot of sort of slipstreaming down that long straight, the sort of home straight, if you like, and then probably maybe around the outside of that sort of, I'm not sure if it's turn 3, 4, and 5, but the big sort of like horseshoe, if you like, or the sort of like the big, the turn I mean. He'll probably work his way through the pack quite quickly. We saw him do it in Hungary, ish, but there's more opportunity in Sochi. Not much more, because like Louis has said, it is not as easy to overtake as it looks, because, especially that final sector, which is like a wannabe Monaco. It reminds me a lot of the final sector of Abu Dhabi, sort of just 90 degrees here and there. For Verstappen tomorrow, it's all about just getting what he can from it and then letting the title fight roll on in 2 weeks' time into everybody's favourite round, TBC.
Yeah, and an important thing as well, he will at least be driving more than half a car, touch wood, tomorrow. So that will certainly play into things. That's the grid. So it's time to look at some predictions. Now, all three of us have already made our predictions for this weekend. However, considering that we have a bit of a mixed up grid, people probably would like to change those a little bit. So, Louis, let's start with you. Last time out, you said Bottas, Hamilton, Ricciardo. I get the feeling you'd quite like to change that.
Just change the one driver, so it's going to be Bottas, Hamilton, Norris. No, I'm joking. No, I think it's going to be. I actually really don't know, because I've got my wishful thinking head and then sort of my reality sort of side of my brain, and also kick it in. But
go on, say Norris first. I know you want to.
Yeah, right. Norris, Hamilton, Sainz.
Norris, Hamilton, Sainz for Louis. Tom, last time you said Hamilton, Bottas, Norris, as did I, but would you like to change it?
Yeah, I'm going to say Norris, Hamilton. Oh, I don't know. I really don't know. I do think Hamilton will get up to P2, maybe take the win, but I've got faith that my boy Lando's going to do it. Let me just look at the classification again and pick a name out of a hat. I'm going to say Sainz P3.
Sainz P3.
Yeah. Wishful thinking.
Yeah, I am also going to change mine to Lewis, Lando, and I want to say George Russell, but that is wishful thinking. So I think I'm going to have to say Carlos Sainz as well, because, he's there and he could pull off quite a good defense against, the trailing pack as well. And bold predictions, the two of you made yours based off qualifying, so I'm absolutely getting a new bold prediction from the two of you. So, Louis, your bold prediction for tomorrow, please.
Yeah, but my qualifying was very bold, so I'm going to go for a not so bold one this time. So my bold prediction is going to be George Russell leads into turn 2.
George Russell leads into turn 2. Well, at least you'll know very soon as to whether your bold prediction is going to work or not.
I mean, starting third, he's got the slipstream. If he gets a mega start, he's round Lando and he's in the lead.
I mean, according to Valtteri Bottas in Drive to Survive, it's the best place to start. Tom, your bold prediction, please.
Hamilton flushs the start and gets swallowed up by some of the cars starting behind him. And approaches. No, actually, no, not. That's it. Hamilton just gets swallowed up. I'm not going to be too specific.
That's how you get your bold predictions to be correct, by not being
Absolutely.
too specific.
I was going to hope that you were going to back Yuki for points or something. Like he's already got it to Q2, and then he gets into a point.
It's Yuki. He'll spin it, or he'll put it in the wall, or he'll take off, or start in reverse or something. So I don't know.
Start in reverse. Does a little 360 whilst he's doing the formation lap on the burnouts bit. Yeah, I'm going to stick with my bold prediction of no safety cars in the race. So, that'll be interesting to see if it happens or not, considering, we've got that mixed up grid and there's going to be a lot of people fighting to get ahead. But we will see. And that is the show. So it's time to give an opportunity to promote to our wonderful presenters. So, Louis, what do you do and where can people find you?
I write mostly for sportlightpro.com. Actually wrote the qualifying report for this race, so if you want to check that out, that's on sportlightpro.com. I also do have my own blog, viewfromthecrowd.com, where I write about various sports that I'm interested in.
Yeah, and do go and check that out. Tom, everything F1, or anything else that you'd like to promote, actually?
So I'm from Everything F1. Whilst the name says Everything F1, it's anything and everything motorsport. We are at Join EF1 on all your usual social media handles, and our Facebook group is the Everything F1 Paddock. Also, we have our podcast, which is the Everything F1 Podcast. We are quite fortunate. We have some very, very good guests on, and we have some good ones in the pipeline as well. And also, we are starting our YouTube channel, which is, unsurprisingly, Everything F1.
Maybe you should change it to Everything and F1.
Oh, I'll give you commission for that, Rubes.
Yeah,
well, that's solid.
Yeah, and if people want to follow me, I am also a YouTuber. I just make vlogs and stuff when I actually get around to it. Ruby Price on YouTube, youtube.com/McFlyRulerOfficial, because 2010 me was a McFly fan and still is, actually. But anyway, so Grid Talk is available on Amazon as well as YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Music, Verbal, Omni Studio, and Pocket Casts. Just search F1 Grid Talk. We have a huge back catalogue of shows with previews and reactions to qualifying and the race results. We are on Reddit, search for the subreddit F1 Grid Talk, and we also have a Patreon for mics, lights, and better recording equipment. You can get your hands on some official Grid Talk merchandise on gridtalk.shop, and don't forget we do have the competition previously mentioned, where you can get yourself some free merch. Also, make sure you subscribe so you're the first to know when each new episode is released. We'll be back tomorrow to review the results from the Russian Grand Prix, and we will be sticking on YouTube for a bit to discuss any questions that you've left us and anything else that we haven't actually covered yet. So thank you very much to Tom and Louis for joining me.
No worries.
Pleasure as always.
Yeah, thank you very much for listening so far, and goodbye. Thank you. Yeah.
So sorry, I'm dying to blow my nose. I'm just going to turn my video off a sec.
Feel free. So first of all, I'm just gonna go for some of the comments that we've had so far. So Connor Walker.
Yep,
of course.
of course.
Thank you so much for your support of this podcast, Connor. But yeah, wow, what a crazy what a crazy qualifying. Do you think Red Bull is going to start regretting giving Checo the extension? So, because he's off screen in a minute, I'll give it to you, Louis.
I don't think they're going to be regretting it. I know his performances haven't been great, but I think it's still a little too early to jump the gun. I think because this season he has been doing well, and the reason why Red Bull is still, within this sort of constructors battle is because Perez has been getting decent points and he has been backing up Verstappen in a lot of races. It just seems to be at the moment he seems to have tailed off somewhat, and that is what is causing a lot of the issues that people are sort of now starting to worry about. But I think it's a little too early to say now. I think it's about time that Red Bull actually gave some support to that second driver, because we all get Verstappen is a great driver. He is very quick, but there is something seriously wrong when you've got the likes of Pierre Gasly, Alexander Albon, and Sergio Perez all really struggling in that seat. It can't just be, it's Max Verstappen, that second seat's cursed. It is probably something within the team.
Yeah, and it is also worth remembering as well, the cars have a very different concept from next season. That's going to play a big part. And also, when Perez doesn't perform, he doesn't perform. But when Perez has performed this season, he's performed very well.
He does still have
And
a
he's
race
been
win
doing
this season.
Yeah, exactly.
And Bottas doesn't.
Do you not? Wait.
Yeah.
Fucking Ocon has a win this year, and Bottas doesn't.
Ocon and
Daniel Ricciardo's got a win this season.
So it's mad that Danny Rick is only the second driver after Perez to win for two different teams in the turbo hybrid era.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I think Lewis has been at Mercedes the entire time.
Yep.
Williams bottled a couple of potential wins with Bottas in the Williams.
Yeah, when they saw the, cool martini
livery. That 2016 livery was absolutely paying, honestly.
Yeah.
And Seb didn't win in 2014 for Red Bull.
No,
Yeah.
because he was shit that season.
Yeah.
I mean, he was. He almost forgot how to drive a car.
I think because he's gone from being the golden child to Danny Rick was coming through, new engine philosophy, very different way of driving, all the recovery systems, and sort of like, whoa, hang on now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he went to Ferrari, and that went well.
It did for a while.
Yeah, but
2015 he won in Malaysia, and then he was doing all right, and then 2018 sort of onwards just went to shit.
Seb should have won the championship in 2018.
Yes.
Ferrari fucked up so many opportunities for him, man.
The second half of the season was painful to watch for Ferrari.
Yeah.
They just bottled it. But going back to Conor Walker's point about Perez, and I'm glad that I think it was you who mentioned it, Ruby, that the Red Bull has a particular way of being driven. Now, realistically,
but yeah.
Oh, sorry. But since Danny Rick left Red Bull, which he announced summer break 2018. I still remember hearing that news. I was driving down
it happened on my birthday. That's how I remember it.
Yeah, happy birthday, Danny Rick's off to Renault. Yeah, but yeah, I remember I was driving down the A48 into Cardiff. I was going to work, and I was just like, "Whoa, what the hell, Danny Rick's going?" That's one of those. It's like a snapshot in my memory. I remember it because I didn't expect it. And I think ever since then, will you fuck off, please, Facebook? I said please. I think ever since then, Red Bull have just gone right. We're building the car around Max, and whoever's coming in, they got to get used to it because that car has it effectively has an insecure rear end. That's not a phrase I ever thought I'd say live on air. But it's got a lot of instability because Max likes to basically sort of slap the car around, I suppose is the best way I can put it, and it suits his driving style. But if you look at the two drivers coming from AlphaTauri, Albon and Gasly, the AlphaTauri is obviously an easier car to drive. It is obviously a decent car, but it is fundamentally easier to drive, and it is compromised compared to the Red Bull in some points.
I mean, it has to be an easier car to drive because it's designed to have rookies coming into it.
Exactly, although Tsunoda's doing a good job of cocking that up.
He did well in Bahrain, but it did.
Where he'd spent the last 3 weeks practicing around it.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And then Imola, put it in the wall. France, put it in the wall. Baku, put it in the wall. Yeah, spot the trend here.
He caused 3 red flags in his first 4 races.
Yeah.
And we thought Mazepin was going to be the on-track problem. Oh, wait, he also was.
Yeah.
Then Mick came to Monaco, and then that went all wrong.
Wrong, yeah. He's just like, hey, I need a piece of that. But seriously, that Red Bull, obviously with the right driver in the right sort of environment, it is rapid. And Perez did still win a race. Yeah, he got a bit of fortune with Hamilton just getting it wrong. We all know what happened with the brake bias and everything. But it's not an easy car to adapt to, that Red Bull. And we've spoken before about the pressure cooker environment that Red Bull is. And I think some drivers have put too much expectation on themselves. I think the difference with Perez is because he's got so many years of experience, he'll know how to manage that within himself. He'll know how long it's going to take him to adapt and get used to all the different nuances, working with different engineers, with different teams. It's different pressure driving for a top team than it is driving for a midfield, even a top midfield team. So it's not just the car, it's the media spotlight. It's the pressure from Helmut Marko and from Christian Horner and Jonathan Wheatley, all the sort of like Red Bull overlords. It's there's a lot to answer to, and if Red Bull didn't give Perez an extension this year and said we're looking for another driver next year, serious questions would be raised, because people will be saying, well, hang on, why are we going through so many drivers at once? What's wrong? Something needs to change. Something needs to be done.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
Yes, yeah, so sorry, I just one more point. And I think this is what you said, Ruby. Although knowing what I've just said,
it could be Louis as well.
It could be Louis. 2022 brings very different regulations, and again, look at the smile on Louis' face. I think he said that.
No, this one was Ruby.
It was Ruby. 2022 brings very, very different regulations, different philosophies to the car. It almost levels out the playing field a bit because the teams are effectively having a bit of a reset. So it'll be interesting to see how Perez gets on there. And I think that is probably partially why they've kept him on, because Red Bull just need a bit of consistency if they're going to continue to be the championship fighting team.
Yeah. Louis, did you have anything to say?
Yeah, I was just, when you're saying like questions would be asked if they didn't give Perez that thing, if they didn't give Perez that contract extension, questions are immediately raised by everyone about what happens at Red Bull, because Perez hasn't had the worst season. He's not been, I would say arguably he's not been as bad as Albon, and I don't think he's been as bad as Gasly was.
No.
So he's definitely deserved to earn that seat. And when we're talking about someone like Sergio Perez, who's been in Formula One since 2011, getting dropped after a single season at Red Bull when he's not had a bad season, questions are raised. And then the question then becomes, who do you even get to replace him? The Red Bull junior drivers, you're not going to take one like, say, Liam Lawson or
like Deruvula or someone.
Deruvula or Yuri Vips. Any of them. Yeah, you're not going to yank them out of F2 to plonk them straight into the Red Bull seat. It's not going to happen.
And Alex Albon's already just got a contract at Williams.
Exactly. Pierre Gasly is, but Helmut Marko
he's
said
not
that
going back there.
Yeah, Helmut Marko said very clearly that he does not want Pierre Gasly back in the Red Bull, which is just insulting to someone who is such a great driver. And it just shows how much of an arse Helmut Marko is.
Because it shows that he got it wrong.
Yes.
If any of those drivers go back into that seat.
100%. 100%.
Bring back Brendan Hartley.
No. I've said it before, and I will say it again. It is time for the return of the torpedo.
He's with Alpine now.
It doesn't matter. He was with Ferrari before, and they dragged him back.
To move on to something different, breaking news: Ricciardo has got a reprimand for the incident that saw him impede Stroll in Q1, but no grid penalty. Yeah.
Oh. BRB, going to the FIA website.
Yeah. Stays P5. So
it wasn't anything like you can't. No, if you're on the pit exit, there's really nothing you can do. I think it would have been very harsh to give him a penalty. Maybe if it
They
was
both got
Hamilton,
through the
he
session
impeded.
as well.
So
yeah. So I think common sense has prevailed a bit there. So I'm leaning on my desk because it's on my monitor, and my shoulder really hurts. So reprimand drivers first. So basically, he's been told don't do it again, and McLaren have said don't be a twat. That's paraphrasing.
would they say it straight to Michael Massey? I would.
Yeah, that's all right. They'll Christian Horner will either be on the blower or Toto will be sending him emails again. That's just, or Lewis will fly down there on his magic scooter. So it said here McLaren admitted they made a wrong assumption that Stroll was on a slow lap, which is fair enough in quali because 9 times out of 10 they are, but because of the conditions, Stroll was doing continuous flying laps.
Yeah, it is one of those things. Like
it was
in
just
any
it
other
was
context, it would have been a slow lap because you don't push 2 consecutive laps really that often. There are some circuits, but
and it was just these particular conditions and everything today. It was just
difficult to judge.
Yeah.
We have got other comments. From
sorry.
5 red lights. Join lights. I don't know if you covered this, but given the power of the toe at the start from P3, A, can George Russell take the lead at T2? Someone's bold prediction. And B, could he get another podium?
No.
Yeah, I don't think, unless something absolutely crazy happens, like
absolute downpour midway through the race.
It's not a context where that Williams is going to be fighting for the podium. It's not like Hungary where you like absolutely struggle to overtake. And, as long as the race starts, there shouldn't really be any context where that Williams does finish on the podium either.
There's a long straight. There's a lack of straight line speed there from the Williams. I imagine a lot of George's lap time came through the corners, especially the slow corners, because he had the temperature in his tyres to be able to have a bit more grip than cars that are faster than him. But no, George, if he gets a good start, he's going to have the toe of Lando in front of him. He could lead into turn 2. That is a possibility. We've seen it happen before. We've seen it, not happen before. We've seen it many times here in Russia. Starting on the front row isn't the best, just because it's such a long run down to turn 2, and more likely than not, you're not going to have anyone toe, and that's hugely powerful in Formula 1. But in terms of podium, as soon as sort of DRS starts to get toe activated, I think George is going to be a sitting duck. And when drivers are all in, the cars are in better conditions, the tyres don't require all that warm up. I think the likelihood is that Russell will drop down the grid, which is a shame, but next year he's in the Mercedes. So if we were talking about this in the context of George Russell and the Mercedes, I'd have no doubt that George A probably would be leading into turn 1 and B probably would win the race.
Yeah.
I've just, sorry to change the subject, I've just watched the replay of Hamilton spinning after he changed tyres. He's lucky he didn't damage his rear wing, actually.
Yeah.
Although it's a fairly innocuous spin, that could have actually been a hell of a lot worse.
Yeah,
Sainz did the same thing.
I
don't know if anyone noticed that, but Sainz did the same thing on them.
I did, yeah. Do you know, imagine if we'd have done the watch along for this race. Bloody hell.
Just 2 minutes later, me being like, "Oh, Lando's got pole."
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. One last thing from 5 red lights. Seen a tweet suggesting that Merck could be considering another power unit for Valtteri to put him next to Max. What are your thoughts on this?
Well,
I could understand why, because they'd be covering off like any sort of like serious progress that what's he called, Bottas would be making. No,
Verstappen.
Thank you. Sorry, brain fade.
VB, MV, they've both got V's in it.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, it's basically the same. If they did I don't know whether that's like the ultimate fuck you to Bottas, or if that's like so that's either genius or evil, possibly a combination of both.
Yeah. I think the way that I see it, like, he's got more chance of being, like, causing a problem for Max Verstappen if he's starting where he is,
Yeah.
you know.
But
Putting him in that foray near the back, like, just puts more chances of Max immediately getting past him because he's had some lightning starts.
Yeah.
Bottas is not always the best off the line as well.
No.
Yeah. And also, if Verstappen really wants to, he will just push his way through.
I think the only reason
Max
why
doesn't
they
drive into cars, according to Reddit. Right, go on, Louis.
He didn't. I'm just saying the sausage curb is the only reason why. I will say this, right?
Thank you.
I know it is a touchy subject, and a lot of people like to get angry either side. But Silverstone, that was two drivers who just wasn't going to concede through a corner where two cars do not go into one. Italy, Verstappen had a right to the outside, but it was the only reason why he went up on top of Lewis was because of the sausage curb. It wasn't because Max decided, I'm just going to drive on top of Lewis's car. But no, Verstappen loves to get his elbows out. We've seen that so many times. You see it, well, at Monza earlier in the race, and we saw it Imola. We've seen it in Spain as well. Verstappen is what he does. And honestly, the only reason why I could see if Bottas was going to take a penalty or Mercedes is going to make Bottas take a penalty for his power unit is because they are experiencing some reliability issues. That has been something that has been noted by Mercedes, and they've openly said that their engine at the moment, especially as it gets wear on it, is not the most reliable. So unless they had any serious concerns on Valtteri's engine, which they shouldn't do considering they replaced it in the last race, I don't think it's the best idea. And at the moment, with Bottas is still ahead of Perez starting the race, Verstappen's all the way at the back. There is opportunity to be gained with the likes of, you have Fernando Alonso in front, you have George Russell in front, two cars, which you would expect Bottas to get past. That's opportunity for more points, increase their lead in the Constructors' Championship. Lewis is still, near the front. He's fourth, but that's, even if he finished fourth and Verstappen out the points, that's 12 more points than Verstappen's getting. I don't think there is any logic to that, especially in this circumstance.
Yep.
I think it would only be logical if Max was a real threat and it was a track maybe such as like Brazil, maybe, where he'd be able to overtake more. I think it's going to be a bit too much for Verstappen to really challenge anywhere above 6th, 5th in this race tomorrow, barring, of course, safety cars, if there is any changes to the weather, which I don't think there is meant to be. Any sort of like anomalies is the only thing that's going to really bring Max into play for the race. So I think Mercedes should just leave Bottas well enough alone. He's good at this track. There is opportunity to make up places, gain points in the Constructors. And if Max is going to come from behind, it's best to have Valtteri already at the front to then block, rather than sending Valtteri to the back where, as Tom rightly said, Verstappen could get past straight away. And all that they've done was pointless.
Yeah.
And I just to add on to what you were saying, Louis, Mercedes need to think about the constructors in this. I mean, if they basically if they sacrifice one driver to maybe hold up another driver or the lead driver of their rival team, it's not doing Mercedes sort of charging the constructors any favors, because they'll have a car probably out of the points, and the driver who has historically gone well on this circuit, got his maiden F1 win on this circuit, got another win, and should have had another win in, I think, 2019 before James Vowles had other ideas. And then obviously with with Perez, yes, granted, not starting third, he's starting 8th, I think. Is he
I
8th?
think it's 9th.
9th. Fucking hellfire. But the point is, Red Bull is still getting constructors points unless something drastic happens.
Yeah, there's an 18-point gap at the minute, and Mercedes want to be leaving this weekend with more than that.
Yeah, and
sorry, someone just started playing on my computer, and as you said that, I don't know what tab it was, where someone just went, sorry. And I absolutely shat myself. Oh my God.
You've been leaving Stream East open.
Who?
Yeah, they don't exist.
Don't say anything, Ruby.
No.
Yeah, that's completely lost on me, I'm afraid.
Good.
I'm not as young and hip as you two, so
we'll tell you when we stop live streaming.
Okay, yeah.
All right. I think on that note, then let's call that a show. So
yeah, I'm intrigued.
Thank you very much to anyone that left us questions, Connor and 5 Red Lights, and thank you very much for listening. Anyone that is still doing so. So yeah, we'll see you tomorrow for the post-race show, which it might be an interesting Russia race. How often do we get to say that?